standards are a very mysterious thing to most people. I'd say most people, you mention standards and they fall asleep. There are other people who know a little bit more about the process and describe it as sausage making. Sometimes, it even gets into the press and you hear, about the standards wars. 10 years ago, we had a war on wireless standards, which actually turned out to be rather bloody. And so today, we're going to engage in a healthy debate. And by healthy, I mean, I don't want anyone to get hurt. So that's why we've separated Steve and Terry. So, Terry Oliver is from the Wild Northwest. He's the Chief Technology Innovation Officer of the Bonneville Power Authority. And so his role there is to drive innovation and to, in the West, this is anarchy, right? It's the Wild West. Steve Winterbrand, on the other hand, is also from the Northwest, so I don't know how Steve winds up as plenary chair of the SGIP. Steve's forte is maintaining control. Things have to be orderly, well-defined, result in finite outcomes. So, this is the essence of standards. Standards are all about, bringing competing forces together, conflicting points of view. And there's a huge difference between the standards process and the legal process, which also does the same thing. You bring conflicting points of view together, but in the legal process, generally, you have a winner and you have a loser. In standards, while occasionally there are winners and losers, the essential idea is to make everybody a winner, make society a winner by getting synergies, getting the best ideas, compromising and making progress and supporting innovation and economic development. So how does this happen? How do you balance these conflicting desires for innovation and chaos and anarchy to encourage innovation, but at the same time achieve interoperability and some degree of control? So I thought of a few questions that are really hard to balance, and I'm hoping that we'll all get some insight from listening to the debate on these questions. So let me start with this. How many of you have heard the expression, the wonderful thing about standards is that there's so many to choose from? Right? Okay, we've got, in the smart grid, this is like standards on steroids. We have so many, competing technologies, legacy technologies, new technologies. Everybody wants, their standard, which reflects their favorite technology, to be part of the framework. Nobody wants to be left out. But now this is a problem for some people because you can't deal with millions of things. And just as an example, the appliance industry, which wants to put a communications port for smart grid on appliances, because they can't spend $100 on every appliance doing this. They can afford maybe $1 or $2 at most, and they've got to narrow it down. Somebody has to make some choices. And there's, couldn't the SGIP or even the government, God forbid, help narrow this down and at least get it down to 1 or 2 or 3. So, so how do we deal with this? Let me start with you, Terry. Shouldn't we really be having a process here that narrows down this chaos down to a few defined choices? Wouldn't that be the right thing to do?
No. In all fairness, in some parts of how we imagine the smart grid, there's probably some narrowing that really is appropriate. But I think we risk in choosing the wrong things to narrow down. We really risk foreclosing some terribly interesting business opportunities, some terribly interesting opportunities to optimize the functionality. And so I think we really have to be careful about where we choose to
So you're saying, but there should be some narrowing, is what I heard.
I think, especially, well, take the normal electric plug, you know. Golly, it's sure nice that at least in around the world, there's only maybe a dozen different plug configurations, and in the U.S. there's essentially 2. So, is there something about narrowing down to a single standard for particular physical features of how we do this? Yeah. But do we want to narrow down some of the higher level functionality? I think not. I think we need to be able to risk having market failures in some of these features in order to learn where the real business opportunity, where the real flexibility ought to be.
Market failures, we can't afford that. It's the electric system. We can't afford any failures. So how do we prevent these failures? I mean, don't we need to really get this down, you know, locked-tight?
Absolutely, George. I mean, Terry, you white-bearded, free sex anarchist. Come on, why can't we get a dozen different plugs out there, you know, to get electricity? I mean, you know, maybe 2 at the most. Why not 1? We've had this around for a long time, you know. There's so much waste that goes on by having these multiple things that are out there, basically overlapping, doing the same thing, and closing down market forces to be able to provide customers with things to make their lives easier. You know, why do we need all this choice?
You know, I think I'm probably fine with that as long as the standard we agree to on cellular phone provisioning here is like the iPhone. So the Android guys are going to be really, really angry. We settle down to it's got to be this.
Well, I mean, it has to be that. I mean, you build on platforms, you know. You can do all sorts of customization on things as long as you have, just like that plug, right? You can plug lots of different things in. You can run different apps on top of the iPhone or Android. But why have something that's so closed like that, like the Apple platform that's there? Have something that's more open, that that's out in the open. People have standardized. They can build to it. They can get all the options.
I think you just turned into a little bit of an
anarchist. Okay. Time out. Let's a healthy debate. Right? So, but this is, you raise an interesting point here with the iPhone. I mean, this is really a great example of innovation, right? So, God, what we want is innovation, but Steve, don't standards stifle innovation?
Well, I think the wrong standards can stifle innovation. But if you standardize on the key places where you can enable lots of choices to occur on either side of those sort of interfaces, then you can really let things explode, and you can have lots of people participating, competing, and offering different products and choices within there if we can get those key places defined and locked down, and not have so many places where you've got incumbents that are in place, and you've got extra costs and things like that for being able to get them in place. So get the standards out there, get them open, choose the right places and the right level of definition for those things.
And that's a really good point. The key places is a pretty narrow set. It's not a broad set. Key places and one of the things we're trying to think through is how do you get to understanding what those key places are and not have a set of standards that's so encompassing that you end up inadvertently stifling the innovation that we're all looking for.
Yeah, that's right. So why do we have a drawer full of different chargers for our cell phones? Because they couldn't sit along the same sort of interface with which to be able to do the same function for all of them, right? Why do we let that happen?
Oh, this is George. Why? This is bad. I'm sensing some agreement here. I guess agreement is okay as long as you're in violent agreement.
Exactly.
Well, let me continue on this theme. So, I come from the telecom industry, and we used to have an expression when we were trying to innovate in the telecom network. We referred to, quote, the tyranny of the embedded base. The tyranny of the embedded base. And what this meant was that we couldn't introduce something that was going to be not supportable by the legacy infrastructure. wanted to make phone calls even though they wanted to be able to send data or do whatever. And so, as a developer, what I found was that very often this constraint, and that's why we call it a tyranny, it really constrained innovation because it really restricted the ways that you could do things and what you could do. And it had the double whammy effect of sometimes increasing cost because you had to add cost so that you could have this compatibility with the legacy. So this is a problem we have in spades in the smart grid. We've got this huge electrical infrastructure, the most complex machine ever created, and surely we have to make sure that everything we put into the grid works perfectly with that legacy embedded base. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, we can't be tossing this stuff out. There's billions and trillions of dollars probably across the world anyway invested in these technologies that are already deployed out there. So we need transitions, we need migrations, and if we can come together in standards, get things down where on those points and key places where there's agreement, as a part of that, defining that, we need to bring along the migration of the stuff that's already out there. We can't just sort of toss that away and forget about it and then put that on the backs of the consumers to go out and buy brand new stuff, force them to do that sort of thing.
Terry, does that make you uncomfortable?
I'm less worried about the consumers. The consumers are used to churn in the marketplace. We experience that all the time. And frankly, the electric grid itself operates on known frequencies at known voltages. There's a lot that we really don't have to worry about backward compatibility to these devices. They were built robust, they were built stupid, and there's nothing we're going to do except to glue things onto them that will ever change that. And they're going to continue their useful life in the system. The really important thing is to understand what the forward architecture looks like so that as we add devices to the system, especially to the bulk grid generation distribution system, that those play nicely together, that they really are interoperable. That's how we're going to maximize the useful value out of this. And if we're paying attention to that everything we build new has to talk to some legacy system, then we're going to be basically trying to paper over a vendor lock-in that the utility industry has experienced for its entire life. And we can't afford that. We really need to figure out some forward architecture clarity and assume that the stupid, robust stuff that's in the grid will remain stupid and robust, and we'll just add to it the nicer, better performing new stuff.
Well, you're sounding a little bit reasonable there. But I must say, you probably leave your children after they were born, you know. We have this, we need to take care of these things. We need to find ways in which that we can bring them along. So certainly having that compatibility needs to be there, and we can't just like toss it. We give birth to something, we toss it away like that. I mean, come on.
Steve, who's going to pay for that compatibility? Are we going to add, like $5 to every ratepayer's bill every month just so that we can have all this compatibility?
Especially when another solution is to be able to simply put some adapter, some adapting function in between the new system and an old system. That can be done to deal with the diverse embedded infrastructure a lot cheaper than trying to make every new thing backwardly compatible with every existing system.
Well, exactly. I mean, if we wouldn't have like all these choices if we would have done something in a more planned manner to begin with, and we didn't have all the different things there. If we had standardized on certain things and picked the right places earlier, we would have less in terms of the migration to do. And what would you do, George? You're going to have people. Why not have them pay the $5 rather than the $50 to just toss their stuff away and force them into a new technology?
There you go, Steve. Wanting to control everything.
Absolutely.
Okay, I've had enough of this. I want you guys to switch sides. This is.
Oh, nice. It's like halftime. We're switching sides.
while they're getting ready for the next round, let me pick up that theme of control.
Oh, I'm in favor of that.
Well, the question is, who should be in control? Now, standards are supposed to be developed through an open, transparent process, and you're not supposed to have any one sort of interest group dominating it, because if they dominate it, then you can get into I think you mentioned, vendor lock-in. You can get proprietary technologies that may increase people's costs. So you want to have some level of balance. Now, this is hard to achieve in an ecosystem where we've got thousands of utilities, we've got hundreds of suppliers, we've got consumers, we've got regulators, and the list goes on. So, I often hear from the utility community that they feel really underrepresented in this process. That the inmates are running the asylum. The vendors, we have the consultants who are really driving the standards, and the utilities are just kind of lone voices in the wilderness. And people forget that they've got to keep the lights on. So the utilities need to be in control of the process. And then you've got everyone else who feels that this process is totally dominated, it's ossified because the utilities are controlling everything. So where are we, and how do we strike the right balance? Terry, how do we control the situation?
Well, the utilities have this fundamental obligation to keep the lights on. And we respond to a regulatory structure to measure our performance in that. And so you guys can, go out and wander around and make whatever standards you want. But we're going to buy stuff from the vendors we know. We're going to respond to the regulation that we experience. And when it comes to creating a set of smart grid standards, well, we're going to probably be late to the party. And we'll respond to a regulatory signal, not to what lunatics in the asylum.
But, if you're not, in the party, and it's the lunatics who are developing this, they're going to be building the products that you're going to have to choose from. So, is that okay?
As long as ABB still sells me exactly what I want when I want it.
Steve, what do you say about this?
Terry, you've been here fascist. I've been taking it from the man for so long. Let me tell you now, everybody needs to be at the table. There's no question about that. And there's responsibilities that people have within society, within their businesses to get things done. But you can't be a roadblock to progress. You can't put somebody in the position that is so authoritative that they would block something that really does not have an impact on, let's say, a reliability issue or whatever. Certainly those things need to be discussed. They need to be worked at. The people need to be at the table, to make sure that we do keep the lights on and all. But they can't be just throwing something there. I mean, you give that power to the man, and there's corruption.
That's what he said, Sam. I agree entirely.
Okay. Well, I'm amazed. Look, this triggers another thought, which is the time dimension, speed. Okay. Over my career, I've been, collecting sort of people's perceptions of the standards process. And here's another one. I once heard an executive describe the standards process as being very much like an expensive Swiss watch. I said, what do you mean? Well, you send your technical people off to Switzerland at great expense, and then you watch. Eventually, maybe something useful comes out of the process. So here's another dilemma that we face. You know, on the one hand, we've got this grid that our economy, our whole lifestyle depends on. The lights have to go on when you switch it on. Introduce, you know, innovation, new technology with standards. You want to make sure that this is going to work, and this is going to take time. Right? You can't screw around with this stuff. You have to really vet it. You've got to get the best people in the world to review it. You've got to run trials before you even finalize, you know, the spec. We just have to take our time and do it right. On the other hand, you know, we've got climate change. We've got you know, environmental, you know, rules we have to meet. We've got these huge investments in the system. We have to get this new technology deployed. Otherwise, we're all going to be paying for it in other ways. And you know, we have to meet market needs. These products have to get out there. If we don't want them to be stranded, we have to have the standards. We've got to go fast. We have to. This is ready, fire, aim. It can't take forever. So, what do we do? Are we going too fast or are we going too slow? Steve, what do you think?
We're going too slow. I mean, we have to get stuff out there. You can't have standards be in the way of making progress for the urgent needs that are there. That's why we need, you know, different companies, different ideas out there, experimenting, making business. Some will fail, but the ones that really make it forward, that's the thing that's going to end up defining the marketplace, finding the path forward, and those are the things that ultimately will get into standards. If we wait in a green field and put some people in a room to create a standard for it, I mean, that's an ivory tower. We might as well do that in the national lab. And we need people out there in the real world.
Talk about the pot calling the kettle black.
Sorry, I bet that makes you real uncomfortable.
We need to get these things right. We can't just be having stranded costs. We can't be putting out millions and millions of dollars in meters only to find out, for example, that they don't have the functionality that we need 5 years into what should be a 20, 30-year life. And so there's key elements of this thing that we really have to put some thought to before we spend a lot of money on it.
Absolutely, put some thought to it, and if you put some thought to it, I mean, just look at that at that environment where these meters are going in, you know, wholesale across the board, not necessarily in the value particular places where they can do the most good, but in a blanketed sort of way. You know, where's the real sort of business proposition in that? Ought to get some people out there, you know, define some things in cities, in rural areas, they have different needs, different things. They don't deserve the same solutions. We should have, you know, ideas that are going out there and making it different, and not be constrained to have to follow the exact same thing.
But I think you're painting us into a corner of sunk costs.
The sunk cost well, for one thing, we're in a different world now. I mean, these things are not going to don't have to last 30, 40 years. I mean, how long you had your iPhone, right? You know, this is technology that needs to be updated over time, and we need to think about this in a new paradigm.
And we still have very large systems. We have very large infrastructure, and we're adding very large infrastructure even as we speak. That infrastructure really does need to have thoughtful standards in place before we go about investing.
Well, if that means that you can't do anything until the thoughtful standards are there, then I mean we might as well, you know, go to the beach. I don't know.
Hey, on that note, that's the best idea I've heard this morning.
Anybody for Santa Cruz?
So, we were trying to have a little fun this morning, but I think you can have an appreciation of why all of this is so hard. There really are no right answers. We're constantly having to juggle these conflicting forces and trying to make the right judgments from a technology, economic, consumer, point of view. And all I can do is thank Terry and Steve for having a little fun with us this morning. And thank all of you